Today we're doing 11.1 congruent figures, and our I can statements for today. I can name corresponding angles and corresponding sides of congruent figures, and I can identify congruent figures. Congruent figures are figures that have the same size and same shape. The triangles below in the picture are congruent. The order of the angles is the corresponding angles, and the sides are the ones that match. So in triangle 1, A and D are both in blue. Those are corresponding angles. B and E are both in green. Those are corresponding angles. And C and F are in red. Those are corresponding angles. So in our first type of problem, we are looking at naming the corresponding angles and the corresponding sides for the shape. Sometimes they have the shapes positioned in the same direction, and sometimes they don't. So you have to pay attention to how the shapes are positioned. All right, so we're going to make a list of all of the congruent angles and the corresponding sides. So I'm going to start with the corresponding angles part. Make sure when you're naming the angles that you put that angle symbol in front of it. So I have angle A and angle W. Those two are corresponding. Angle B and angle X are corresponding. Angle C and angle Y are corresponding. And angle D and angle Z are corresponding. Now I'm going to do the sides. When you name a side, you need to make sure you put both letters for the sides, the endpoints of that line segment, with a line above it. So side AB looks like this. So side AB and side WX correspond. Then I have side BC and side XY that correspond. On the bottom there, I have CD and YZ that correspond. And then my last pairs of sides, I have AD and WZ. The order that you write the letters does not matter as long as you have the corresponding letters matching up. So for example, on my first pair, I wrote A first and W first because A and W correspond. And then I wrote B second and X second because B and X correspond. Go ahead and pause the video right now and take a look at this next picture. So for this one, we need to list out the corresponding angles and corresponding sides. Hopefully you've already tried this and thought about it. This one, if you look, they are mirror images from each other. So the second one is a flipped version of the original one. So I'm going to start with my angles. I'm going to make a list. I'm going to start with angle J. So angle J and angle S correspond. Angle K and angle R correspond. Angle, let's see, L and angle Q correspond. Angle M and angle B correspond. Angle N and angle T correspond. Then we also have to do the sides. Make sure your letters match up those corresponding angles. So JK, don't forget the line on the top. And RS are going to correspond. Now I want to make sure, since I wrote J first, I actually want to write SR. J and S are the corresponding angles. They both have to be written first. Okay, and then I'm looking at my next one here, and it looks like KL and RQ correspond. Then I have LM and QV that correspond. MN and VT that correspond. And finally, we have NJ and TS that correspond. Sometimes they ask you to write a congruent statement to identify the congruent figure. So two figures are congruent when the corresponding angles and corresponding sides are congruent. Remember, congruent means that they are equal. For the figures, they're the same shape and the same size. The congruent statement has the order of the letters with the corresponding angles matching up. So triangle ABC is congruent to, that's what the little equals with the squiggly above it means, triangle DEF. So for this next one, it says which square is congruent to square A. So we have to look at the side lengths here to help us figure that out. So square A is a square and all the sides are 8, and square C is also a square. Even though it's tilted on its side, it's still a square. And all the sides have that side length of 8 units. So those two are congruent. In this next problem, it tells us trapezoids A, B, C, D, and J, K, L, M are congruent. The order of those letters tell us which angles are congruent. So A and J correspond, B and K correspond, and so on. So for this one, we're using the corresponding sides to help us find missing lengths. So for A, it says, what is the length of side JM? JM corresponds to side AD. So here's AD. Here's JM. So looking at that picture, I can tell that side JM is going to be 10 feet. And then for B, what is the perimeter of JKLM? Well, I need to add all the sides together. But since I know it's congruent to the original figure there, I'm going to just add the sides that are on my original figure of ABCD. So I have 8 plus 6 plus another 8 plus 10. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of those together. Go ahead and take a minute to do that if you have not done so already. Okay, and it looks like for that one, my perimeter is going to be 32 feet. As always with perimeter, you want to make sure that you have a label on your answer. Same for our side length one in part A. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try these next two problems. For 2, which square in example 2 is congruent to square D? If I go back to example 2 here, square B is the one that has the side lengths of 9. So that's the one that I'm going to have here that's congruent. The side lengths are the same and the angles are the same, square B. And then for number 3 here, it says in example 3, which angles of JKLM correspond to angle C? And what is the side length of KJ? So which angle of JKLM corresponds to C? If I go back here for a moment, JKLM, C is the third letter that is in our shape here, ABC. And so JKL, that's our third letter there. So that tells us that C and L are corresponding angles. So over here, I'm going to write angle L. And then what is the length of side KJ? Again, I have to go back and look at this last one. So JK or KJ is over here on the side. I'll switch colors. Here's KJ. We look at the corresponding side, which is AB, and that tells us that that missing side is 8 feet long. All right, and that's it. That's all you need to know about congruent figures.